The information shared in these conversations and videos are intended for general knowledge and entertainment purposes only. It should not be considered as legal advice or professional guidance. Additionally, any documentation or references to specific content are solely for the purpose of discussion and understanding. It does not imply endorsement, promotion, or support of said content. The views expressed in these videos and/or conversation are those of the individuals involved and do not represent any official stance or opinion. The content you are about to experience may contain strong language, including explicit words and phrases. This language is used for artistic expression and may be integral to the storyline or character development. It is important to note that the use of such language does not endorse or promote offensive behavior. Viewer discretion is advised, and please enjoy the show responsibly.
Step up, step up! Yeah! We pledge! We pledge! We pledge! We pledge!
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Swords of Reason, right here on the SpeakeaZy show. This is where logic meets passion. And whenever you're ready for your opening statement, I will start the clock up with your voice.
All right, I don't think I'm going to make it to the 10 minutes, but we'll see. So tonight, I will be arguing that the practice of prostitution should be legal. The most important thing I can stress tonight is that legality does not equal morality. This is not a debate about whether prostitutes are good or bad. It's about whether or not the practice should be prohibited by the government. Prostitution is undoubtedly a degenerate behavior by almost any metric worth listening to. But the debate is about how a free society should handle these issues. We should legalize it not because of virtue, but because prohibition is objectively more harmful than legalization with regulation. I am not arguing that anyone should just be able to sell their body in any time and manner, willy-nilly, full stop, as my opponent may or may not try to frame it. I am specifically saying that prohibiting this activity has shown, just like alcohol, just like cannabis, and just like guns, it does not work. And because of that, we should create the societal circumstances to make sure that is done in the safest way possible. I believe the strengthening of the moral muscle is a strong factor, but really only another positive byproduct. In America, we shouldn't need the government to give us permission to make moral choices. We are not supposed to be entrusted to, we are supposed to be entrusted to govern ourselves. Laws, as we can see, do not erase desire. They only determine whether vice is experienced in the daylight with legal recourse or under the shadow of darkness on the black market. We can look at places like New Zealand, the Netherlands, as examples of how this might play out in America. There's obviously different countries with different cultures and all that stuff, but given that it's illegal here, it's very difficult to get information like this in the U.S. But simply put, New Zealand saw much better health outcomes and less exploitation, and the Netherlands is almost famous for the safe work environments in this context. While I can, of course, source these things, I think throwing sources back and forth at each other is boring and unnecessary. I think there's plenty within the basic data and the concept of law and degeneracy and ethics and all that stuff that I believe that we can spend most of the debate actually debating our ideas instead of reading studies, but we do what we got to do. I anticipate that my opponent will use perhaps even these same countries to make the argument that we've seen a rise in sex trafficking when prostitution is legalized. And he'd be right. But this would be akin to the type of stats lefties use when they say that the right is more violent than the left. When we dig into what right-wing violence actually means in these studies, it's so broad, it simply doesn't reflect reality. Hopefully, we can all agree that a jihadist blowing themselves up or like a prison riot with skinheads is a completely different thing than what we mean when we typically say political violence. Similarly, if I live just outside a state and meet a working girl and I'm like, hey, I live 10 minutes from here, you want to come over? I'll make it worth your time. And she accepts, even with full consent. This is counted as an act of sex trafficking. So if the argument is going to be made, we must dig into the data to be able to parse out the more violent version of what comes to mind with girls being thrown into the back of the van and bags over the head and all that stuff. That is not the only version of what this means. And, another side that's the whole Loverboy method with Andrew Tate, love him or hate him. I didn't think that was considered sex trafficking, but it is. As many of you know, I am not a religious believer. Despite the respect I have for Christians individually, the role of Christianity in our society and culture, and even the ethical framework that it provides. Even though I have no idea whether a God exists, I do know that Christian ethics are certainly strong enough to prevent the average Christian man from going to a streetwalker just because the secular government says so. When the state polices every sin, people have no need to think about their own personal morality. They can just appeal to daddy government. Look at the precipitous drop in cigarette smokers over the last 20 years. That was not because of any kind of prohibition. It was because of cultural aspects like the truth ads. And whether any one of these things were effective is not the point. The point is that we saw a dramatic decrease in the number of people that smoke cigarettes because it just stopped being cool. It started being shameful. Girls didn't want to date guys that were smoking, and because of that, society changed. And of course, people still smoke, but a lot less. We can. They say nicotine is one of the most addictive substances. And I mean, what we're talking about, maybe just a bit more addictive. But if we can do it for cigarettes, there's no reason it can't be done for any other unwanted behavior. Shame and taboo are tools that have gone vastly underused. And I think we can all see the correlation between that and the downfall of our culture. As a Christian, I'm sure JS will want to discuss his objective morality. Totally cool. I have an objective morality too, so that would be a non-starter unless he is claiming not only to have an objective morality, but an absolute morality, aka the only right one, in which case he would need to, at the very least, prove the existence of his God. And again, I'm happy to have that discussion, but I don't think it will get us anywhere in relation to the prompt. Again, the question isn't, is prostitution good, or should we celebrate it, or even should we shame it? The prompt is a legal one. Should it be legal? And I will show that my position is the correct one. JS likes to use a quote in his opening, and so in kind, I will too. As Benjamin Franklin famously said, "They that can give up essential liberty to attain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." If we outsource every moral decision to the state, we stop exercising our own moral judgment. The moral muscle atrophies. A society that can no longer argue or persuade privately will become brittle and authoritarian. Don't let the state become your consciousness. Say no to daddy government being the arbiter of morality. And I could save my time.
All righty.
Pretty well.
Thank you for that opening statement. And with that, we'll hand it over to JS Urban Adventures for his opening statement.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight, my opponent will be attempting to argue for the legalization of prostitution. My job will be to negate this proposal. I intend to do so by demonstrating the utilitarian benefits that come from keeping prostitution illegal, from reducing harm to women and men involved in prostitution and bettering society overall. My opponent may appeal to freedoms being violated or a non-aggression principle in law enforcement. And my question for him will then be, is aggression ever justified by law enforcement? And if so, when? What level of harm must be done before a society is able to charge or arrest the person caught causing the harm? I would argue the amount of harm from prostitution to society justifies laws restricting the act and enforcement of said laws. And in my opening, I will proceed to lay out some of those harms. I will begin with the obvious harm to the women who are often unwillingly coerced, culturally or financially incentivized, or even trafficked, yes, into the sex work industry, specifically prostitution. I'll start with the negative mental harms caused to women in prostitution. The Chicago Alliance Against Sexual Exploitation states that 68% of prostitutes suffer depression, 55% report anxiety, and 33% report symptoms of PTSD. Then, of course, we know of the harms caused by STIs among female sex workers. The World Health Organization says women in prostitution are 30 times more likely to be living with HIV. 10.8% have syphilis, and increases in other STIs and viral hepatitis infections have been consistently documented. The majority of women involved in prostitution are marginalized women from poor, minority, or LGBTQ communities, and many are underage, a problem that is not quelled by legalization. The U.S. Department of Justice assessment of U.S. government activities to combat trafficking in persons shows that 70% of female trafficking victims are trafficked into legal commercial sex industries, including stripping, pornography, and legal brothels. Feminists who fight for partial decriminalization of prostitution, like Dr. Melissa Farley, claim 84% of women involved in prostitution are under third-party control or pimped, and they believe Johns should be criminalized rather than legalizing them using brothels. Author and co-founder of Justice for Women, Julie Bindel, is quoted saying, "Under legalized regimes such as Germany, the Netherlands, and Nevada, there are more murders and attempted murders by Johns and by pimps than there are in countries which have legalized demand." She agrees that through legalizing pimps through brothels and Johns to have their demand supplied, more women would be harmed. Even the most staunch feminists would not argue for full legalization. Most lean toward a Nordic or equality model of decriminalizing the women but prosecuting the men. Which brings me to my second point, the detriment legalizing prostitution would have on men. My opponent is arguing for legalizing prostitution, which means Johns and pimps are legal, tax-paying consumers of young, mentally and financially unstable women. What sort of effect do you think this will have on young men? Allowing this behavior to go not only unpunished, but inevitably to be normalized and even encouraged through advertising and marketing campaigns would lead young men down a dark, harm-filled path. Prostitution desensitizes men to sex and leads them toward more antisocial and deviant behavior. Instead of finding a wife, they hide in their house playing video games and rely on their weekly visit to the bunny ranch, where they will pay $400 to $2,000 to spend some time bussing in a hooker instead of building interpersonal relationships. Men meet women and go on dates to establish a connection with her and demonstrate their ability to provide for said women in hopes of finding a wife to raise their children. Prostitution is the exact opposite. This policy would also lead to a rise in adultery among men who were even lucky enough to find a wife. The normalization of prostitution would lead to men being more likely to choose to step out on their wives at a brothel or a roadside truck stop if there were no chance he would be arrested. It would be much easier to cheat with a whore than with the family friend that comes to dinner parties. This would lead to less families remaining intact and separated families having worse outcomes for children and society in general. It's hard to find studies on the harms of prostitution on men because most studies have been conducted by feminists who want to decriminalize hookers but arrest men. But I can speak on the men from my own personal experience, not to brag or to flex, but rather to establish ethos. I have known many sex workers and customers closely. I have sat outside a massage room in a trap house playing security for these girls. I've dated women who became sex workers. I've stayed in hotel rooms with friends who were working girls. But one thing I've never done is pay one. The men who pay for sex are betas. They're weak and shady, and often are likely to do very harmful things to a young prostitute. These simps should not be encouraged or even allowed legally to do the action which leads to so much harm to themselves and the women involved. Besides direct harm to the men and women involved in prostitution, harm to families and children, and to young adults being raised into a culture where prostitution was legal, the cost to all of society would outweigh the benefits of legalization. Legalization does not end the illegal prostitution business. It instead creates a dual economy. How much infrastructure would need to be created and altered in order to provide women safe, legal places of work for their new career field? We would need college courses on hoery to ensure job placement. Otherwise, most prostitutes would not be hired at a brothel. They would instead resort to street walking or escorting under the watchful eye of Mac Daddy Pimp. And you know they won't be paying their taxes. And prostitutes will still be getting raped and assaulted. So will those Johns, pimps, and hoes still be aggressed upon and arrested by police anyway? Also, in order to outprofit the illegal market, the legal government-taxed market would need to use advertisement, propaganda, and government authority to normalize and control the legal economy. This leads to less social stigma and shaming and more acceptance and justification. The dual market increases demand, demand in this case being 18-year-old girls or younger. Law enforcement and the judicial system become more divided due to more legal precedent being set and cops needing full retraining. New branches of government and three-letter agencies are formed using tax money from degeneracy, creating a bigger, richer government with more power over easily influenced people. Seems counterintuitive for a libertarian to ever fight for this. Every policy debate should have some arguments made as it relates to policy, logistics, legislature, and regulation, and these are just some of mine. In conclusion, after doing a thorough cost-benefit analysis of the harms caused and aggression necessary to regulate, tax, and control legal prostitution versus keeping it illegal, I find less pragmatic and ethical utility in legalization. The harm to women and cost to care for and protect these women from said harm would far outweigh the benefit and reduction of aggression to them if prostitution remains illegal. The harm to the strength and masculinity in young men would deteriorate their ability to lead and protect, costing all of society greatly and weakening our civilization. And the burden on our legal system and changes to our culture and economy from legal prostitution would demoralize and destabilize our people while empowering and enriching our government, leading to more aggression and harm. All of these costs and lack of benefits clearly depict a less pragmatic and more destructive proposition than my stance for keeping prostitution illegal. Before I finish, I want to paraphrase something I heard from a great man named Andrew Wilson. He recently said, when debating with utilitarians, libertarians, liberals, or atheists, you can't simply beat them with logic and reason. You have to also tell them how to feel. So at the risk of being accused of an appeal to emotion, allow me to leave my opponent and the audience with one serious question to think about during this debate to help us all know how to feel about this issue. After hearing all the likely harms I listed, would you want your daughter to become a prostitute legally at 18 years old? And would you want your son spending his money on hookers rather than finding a decent wife and raising children? If the answer is no, and this thought horrifies you, then you should have no problem with keeping prostitution illegal. You should feel disgusted thinking about this. When we prostitute our daughters and make them whores, the land falls to whoredom and wickedness. Therefore, we must keep all prostitution illegal. And I'm done.
All righty. Thank you for that, JS. Thank you both for your opening statements. And now we're going to move into the uninterrupted 5-minute rebuttal. Real quick, just say thank you to Cap'n for the $10 and Not Voltaire and Elizabeth for becoming members. I don't highlight during openings and closings, just again to avoid distractions. But with that, we're going to move into 5-minute uninterrupted rebuttals. We're going to hand the mic back to the Indian Jesus. And whenever you are ready, I will start the timer up with your voice.
All right, so just a couple notes here. I think let's just go from where you ended and go back. You asked if I would want my daughter to be a prostitute. Of course not, but just because I don't want something to happen doesn't mean that it should be legal. You are talking about these women as if it is that they are property or whatever, and very clearly, if you are allowed to vote, then you should be able to make decisions about what to do with your body. Again, I addressed the cost-benefit analysis that we would actually have to dig into the numbers to see what you're actually talking about. I don't think the cost-benefit analysis actually does go in your favor. I think it goes in mine, as I said, just like all the other things I listed. The funniest thing you said is that you need to have a degree in hoenomics or something like that. Sorry, reflex, but yeah, that's not how most industries work. What kind of degree do you need to be a construction worker? What kind of degree do you need to be a streamer? What kind of degree do you need to be any of these things? So that's just a red herring. And again, yeah, you're just still saying that I want the government to enforce my personal preferences. You're not giving anything specific about prostitution that isn't true of so many very other harmful things that I don't think that any of us would agree should be legalized. You brought up normalizing things. I never brought up the. I never said normalize anything. This is why society is crumbling, because you appeal to daddy government instead of private industry and culture. Just because something is legal doesn't mean that it is celebrated. And as I use the example of cigarettes, those are legal, but it's not. People have been doing less and less, not because the government said so, because culturally we decided that is not good. You mentioned 84% of the women were pimped. I would love a definition on what a pimp is. And then, you brought up the Nordic model of where you go after the Johns and not the women. And that's pretty much what I'm proposing. So I think that might have been a concession right there. What else we got here? 70%. You said 70% of victims were. You were bringing up that 70% of these women go into other things like OF and stripping. So I'd want to know if you think those should also be illegal. Again, all of these things with the STIs or STDs or whatever. If we had a more regulated situation where both men and women had to be tested and protection had to be used, these numbers would go down dramatically. About 68% of these women are depression and anxiety, PTSD, all of that stuff. I would argue that is just women in general. Yeah, again, I think the utility benefits, reducing harm and bettering society actually do fall in my favor, even though it sounds like you're trying to say, oh, Lutch thinks prostitution is good. That is, as stated clearly in my opening, that is not the argument. That is a legal one that I agree with you culturally that we should shame people who do this, but clearly prohibition does not work. See my tap.
All righty. Thank you for that rebuttal, Indian Jesus. And with that, we're going to hand the mic back over to JS Urban Adventures for his 5-minute uninterrupted rebuttal. And whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
Okay. When you go second on these, you got a lot more stuff to respond to in the rebuttal. So I'll respond to what you said in your opening first, because my opening is pre-written, and then I'll respond to what you said in your rebuttal. So you talk about regulation. You want regulation. Well, and this also goes to your rebuttal. The Nordic model and the equality model is not legalization. That's legalizing the women, the prostitutes, but not legalizing the Johns and the pimps. They arrest the men and they legalize these are feminists who argue that the prostitutes are going to go through more harm if they get a criminal record. They're going to get harassed by police and they're forced into this career field by bad life circumstances. So they don't want to go after the women. They just want to go after the pimps and the Johns. Definition of a pimp is the manager, which kind of ties to what you said about the women aren't property. An employee is essentially, in a way, it's kind of like property of the manager so a brothel just becomes a legal pimp, and the place where she works, that's her job. She can't lose her job. She's going to lose her house. So essentially she kind of becomes property of that place while she's working. And then I explained, you talk about shame and we need to not normalize it. And I never said that you thought it was good. I'm just saying that you argue for legalization. But shame, I talked about how a dual economy and a market, if there's a market for this, it doesn't shame people. It normalizes it and it encourages it. As soon as pot became legal in California, you saw commercials on TV for pot shops. You see billboards for pot shops. Same with cigarettes, same with alcohol. And if we're going to play this game where you keep asking me, what about cigarettes? What about stripping? What about prostitution? I'm a prohibitionist. Yes, all of that should be illegal, but that's irrelevant. But we can actually go down that road, because maybe you can find something that I don't think should be illegal that's harmful, and you could show an inconsistency in my internal critique of utilitarianism. And that's fine, because I'll show some inconsistencies in your views too. So I'm ready for that. Let's see. About morality being objective. I do believe morality is objective, but I'm coming at this from, I'm trying to take the that out of it, you know. I'm trying to just look at it practically. This is a policy debate. We're talking about legalizing something, so I'm trying to stick to policy and what's better for society. I agree about the stats and studies being kind of irrelevant because we'll be able to go back and forth all day. I liked your point actually about all women are kind of depressed and PTSD. I can't really argue it. That was a good one. I actually thought about that when I was writing it, but that's what they say. That's what the stats say. So, the lover boy method. You talked about the lover boy method. The lover boy method. I would agree that it's not sex trafficking if it weren't for the idea of sexual tourism. Now, I don't know about Andrew Tate specifically. I don't know what he did or didn't do. I know what he was alleged to do, but if those girls were underage and he was doing sexual tourism, then yeah, that should definitely be illegal. Sure. But meeting a girl and traveling around with her shouldn't be illegal. Now, should OnlyFans be illegal? That's another topic. But I do think that is, you know, some degenerate sex work, and probably, yeah, it should be illegal. Oh, and then one other thing, you were talking about Christian men should not need laws to do what's right. Laws aren't written and made for moral people. Moral people and Christian men, we don't have laws to not murder so that non-murderers don't murder. We have laws against murder and theft for the murderers and the thieves. So it's not, we live in a, you know, I say we live in a Christian nation, but probably the majority of the people are secular, and our laws are based for secular people. So the laws are for the people who are going to be inclined to do those crimes. And there's going to be a lot of men who want to have sex with women and just pay a little money for it. So, and I'm not a fan of Benjamin Franklin either. And that's it.
All right. If you don't mind, can you give define what you mean by you said sex tourism? I've heard that before, but I don't know exactly what that is.
Sex tourism would be like in France, the age of consent is 14. If I'm an American and I go to France to have sex with I don't want to, but that would be sexual tourism.
Okay, gotcha. Fair enough. So, I mean, I think we could start with your comparison of employees essentially being property. I mean, to an extent, I don't disagree that there is an aspect of that, but I don't think that you would agree that because somebody has a job that they are property of their employer. I think at least not in the same context as when we talk about traditional sex trafficking. I don't think those things are comparable. You know, a pimp is not the same thing as a manager. That's why we have the word manager and we have the word pimp.
Well, I mean, the women go to the pimp and they elect to be there. They could run away if they wanted to.
Indeed, they can.
So
why should that be illegal?
Why should it be illegal? Because the pimp's harmed because of everything I listed in my opening. It's harmful to the men who engage in it. It's harmful to the women who engage in it. It's harmful to society. You talk about daddy government and how I'm appealing to daddy government. Have you ever heard of the ATF?
Yep.
Alcohol, tobacco. Which of those three things is legal and which of them is illegal?
Tobacco is legal, alcohol is legal, and firearms are illegal. Well, not illegal, but I mean, you know, not as legal as they should be under the Constitution.
So we have a 3-letter agency that did Waco, that did Ruby Ridge. We have a 3-letter government agency that revolves around 3 legal things that we legalized. So once those things are legalized, they're taxed. The government's going to tax prostitution and brothels.
Okay.
So we're paying taxes to the government. The government's
that's
getting
how
richer.
Legal activities work. Why is that a bad thing? If those taxes are able to help reduce the harm that you're talking about, what's the issue?
Am I wrong? I've listened to some of your debates and stuff. You lean libertarian and utilitarian, right? Those are your.
Yeah, I like to say I am a utilitarian, but I put individual liberty above that.
Okay. As
So
a
essentially,
libertarian, wouldn't you want less government? Once you legalize prostitution, you're creating another whole arm of enforcement. You're creating a whole. They'll
no,
create.
prohibition is all of the government. Legalizing it with regulations would be pulling back pulling back the government, not adding in the government. So when you're talking
No.
about firearms, we already have we already have the Constitution. So any regulations in that case are the government doing more. But in this case, we're already in a position where the government is doing the most, and so I'm asking for the government to do less.
If they're taking in taxes from something, do you think that the government's going to get bigger and expand its power, or do you think it's going to get smaller when it's taking in an increased revenue, a whole new revenue source?
Yeah, in general, more money is going to be a bigger government.
Okay, so that's my point.
Okay, so then because things bring in a lot of tax money, we should make them illegal?
No, that's just it's odd that as a libertarian, this would lead to more government power. This would lead to more laws.
Again, I disagree. We're at full government intervention where you are not allowed to do the thing. Then we pull that back, and you are allowed to do. There are things that right now the government would say, no, you can't do that, but you would be able to do that. So that you're giving you more power, not less.
Who do you think's going to regulate all these brothels? Who do you think's going to manage the infrastructure and the building of brothels and the zoning of where we're going to put the brothels? So
that's still less of an effect than blocking it all. I understand what you're saying. I'm not very clearly the government is going to be the ones that have to regulate. But again, the point that I'm making is that it's not that we're in a position where anybody can do anything, and now we're adding in regulations. We're already past regulations, and everybody's saying not at all. And I'm saying that we should pull that back, and there should be regulations, but it shouldn't be across the board illegal. And again, not because I think it's great or that you should be doing this or that, but because I don't believe the numbers bore out that the harm actually is lesser when it is illegal.
You don't believe the harm is lesser when it's illegal. Wait. Well,
less harm when it's legal.
Less harm when it's legal.
Yeah, because again, you're talking about all the STDs. You talk about women or men getting robbed. You talk about Johns beating up women. All of these things right now. Those are happening on the black market. And so technically, yes, if you're a prostitute and you get robbed or beat up, you could go to the police, but we know that people don't do that in the same way that we know that with drugs, we often see people will let their friends die on an overdose because they don't want to call the cops and get in trouble for doing the drugs. And so they added in a Good Samaritan law. And so now it is pulling the government back. So in normal,
but that's not legalizing. That's not legalizing doing the drug. That's legalizing taking them to the hospital to save them.
No, it's making the situation where because somebody died in your vicinity, the illegal thing that you did no longer is illegal. You no longer get in trouble for doing that.
If somebody's doing drugs in my house and dies, I wasn't doing the drugs. They could have been in my bathroom doing the drugs without me knowing.
Yeah, but that's not how the law works. If there's drugs found in your house, it's your house.
But I would agree with that Good Samaritan law that you could take them or get them help if they need. I would agree with that. That'd be fine.
Okay, so then why wouldn't we be able to apply that to as a first step to prostitution? If you're a prostitute and you get beaten up by a John, then
if I grape a prostitute, I can take her to the place to get a test.
No, the other way around. She could take you to court. She would be able to call the cops on you or take you to court. Even though she was engaged in illegal activity, it now becomes not illegal because of the Good Samaritan law. And so that is a form of legalization and regulation. That's why I specifically stated, I'm not just talking about do whatever you want. We're talking about rolling back prohibition. In the same way with alcohol, it was prohibited, and now there are laws around it. You can do it; it's legal. But that doesn't mean that you could just be driving drunk. It doesn't mean you could be drinking in public, at a school, so on and so forth.
Yeah, we did that so that we could. We did that so that we could get out of the Great Depression, and so that the government could make a bunch of money off of alcohol. And now there's billboards and there's hobos who buy 40s first thing in the morning when they wake up.
So you in favor of?
Yeah, I'm a prohibitionist.
Yes, really?
But anyway, we could save that for another time. But Okay,
I
so
mean,
we're
I think
talking.
that's pretty relevant because that's what I'm trying to demonstrate is that we have a lot of things in society that are harmful, but because of of freedoms that they are legal, and it's not up to the government to decide. Well, that's bad for you, so you can't do it.
Okay.
Remember the soda tax in New York? What was that, De Blasio or whatever? That's un-American. If I want to, drown myself in sugar, who the fuck are you to tell me I can't do it?
So let's say I was for alcohol being legal. Would that be inconsistent of me?
No.
Okay. So what does it matter? Like with policy, we go case by case and issue by issue. So I may say maybe cigarettes and alcohol should be legal, but prostitution shouldn't be legal. That wouldn't be inconsistent.
No, but then I would be able to dig into, okay, well, why is that the case, and potentially show an inconsistency. But fine, if you think you just want to ban everything that's bad, that you think is bad, I guess that's a position. But I don't know how many people are going to agree that whatever JS says should be the law. I think that's a slippery slope.
So it just comes down to my preference. What I like or don't like.
Are you appealing to something else?
No, I'm curious. I'm critiquing your worldview. So would you make cannibalism? Let's say it's very utilitarian. I could end world hunger tomorrow if we all just started eating our dead. Instead of wasting them, instead of burying them in a cemetery somewhere, why don't we all just start eating people? We can say we'll
of the cultural value, because of the cultural value we put in the human body. And so again, going back to the notion, if we didn't have any cultural values, then there wouldn't be anything wrong with it. But
the cultural value we put into the human body. What about the young girl who is turning her body into a vending machine for sex?
Is she of age?
We don't culturally value her body.
Wait, are we talking about someone of age, or are we talking? You said young girl, so.
Well, you said we put a cultural value in dead bodies so we don't eat them, but we don't put cultural value in live bodies of young girls enough to not allow men to have sex with them for money and not allow them to sell their own body.
So again, are you talking about, you say young girls? Do you mean of age 18, but they're young?
18.
Or okay,
18,
so
yes.
yeah, if this again is just because you don't like it and you say it's bad, I don't agree that the numbers bore out that the harm is worse if it is
right. And just because you don't like cannibalism, you say, and we culturally value the body.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So again, I'm appealing to the fact that we want our values to reflect our laws, not the other way around. We don't want the laws to dictate our culture. We want the culture to dictate the laws.
Yeah, and this is the problem with the utilitarian perspective, because we're not actually looking at utility. We're looking at what we like and what we don't like. And so I'm big, bad, mean, authoritarian guy because I want to make immoral things illegal. And you're the freedom guy because you want to keep them legal, even if they're harmful. Even if I can demonstrate all these harms to you, legalizing it, that's what I was talking about in my opening. Legalizing doesn't get rid of all the reason I brought up the college course in hoery is because there's only going to be limited numbers of brothels. All the prostitutes aren't going to be able to get hired at brothels unless we build a brothel on every corner. So
okay,
so these girls are going to want to get job placement. They're going to want to make sure that they're the best and they're ready to get hired. Otherwise, what happens to them?
So, I mean, I can. So again, I'm just going to compare this to a different situation where we already have this. Like if we talk about like hair and makeup, when we go into hair and makeup, that yeah, you could just do it, right? But I think what I'm trying to steel man you. What you're saying is that you have some type of accreditation, then you're more likely to get better clients. And so, is that what you're getting at?
I'm just saying, girls are going to want to get hired at the brothels. There's going to be a limited number of jobs in the brothels. If they don't get jobs in the brothels, what are they going to do?
Get a different job?
No, they're going to work the street.
Okay, but if that's not part of the regulation, then we're already in agreement that that shouldn't be allowed. In the same way that even though you can drink alcohol, that you can't get because you can get behind a car physically doesn't mean that's allowed. So again,
exactly.
we have
and this
regulations.
This is my point, that legalizing it doesn't stop the harm that comes from prostitution. It creates a dual economy where now you have legal ones that you have to regulate and the government profits off of.
Fair,
And
but
then
you
have
can't get rid
illegal
of
ones.
prostitution. That's not really an option on the table. I mean, if it was, then I would be with you. We should get rid of prostitution from human existence. I would be down with that. But that's
Right,
not a
you're
realistic.
right. Right, we can't get rid of murder, but we still make it illegal, even though people are gonna murder.
Well, yeah, but that's because there's no once somebody's dead, they're dead. How is that comparable to somebody having sex consensually?
Okay, theft.
Why
Why
do
do
steal something? It's gone. What do you mean?
So that goes to my original question. My
So what's
main
gone?
question.
What's gone with when a woman engages in prostitution or a man?
Well, the first time, her purity, which is her strongest value, her strongest bargaining chip in a relationship, is
And
that
if she knows that and decides I want to give that away, why are you allowed to tell her no?
there's also been shown about.
Well, hold on. Wait. Could I? Sorry, just if I could.
Go ahead. Ask me the question again.
Yeah.
Sorry,
So if you're saying that, then if she, it's taking away her purity and so on and so forth. If she's aware of that and consents to doing that, who are you to tell her that she can't do it?
No, I'm nobody. She can do that if she wants. That's why I can. Yeah, you're right. Sure. So she can give away her purity if she wants. That's fine.
Again, I agree with you. It's a bad thing, but we're talking about the law, and so I don't think that just because it is harmful, unless it does go to the degree of direct bodily harm, things like that, which we already have laws for. So if you're talking about getting beaten up or all these things, we already have laws for that.
Right, and you agree that it's bad, and that, but instead of making it illegal, we should shame it. And what I'm saying is, when you legalize it, it doesn't lead to shame. It leads to normalization and profit incentive.
Well, not if we get together and all of us who believe what we believe actually speak out against what we speak out against. That's why I brought up the cigarettes, because that is exactly what happened with cigarettes. Cigarettes are harmful. Cigarettes are legal. Cigarettes went out of favor because we shamed it and it became a taboo behavior. Why would we expect? I mean, maybe it will, but I don't understand why you would say that prostitution is principally different, issue.
Principally different from what?
From the cigarettes. I'm saying cigarettes. We agree cigarettes bad, and today we have less cigarette smokers, but we didn't need prohibition for that to happen. So
we have
right
less
now
cigarettes. No, we don't have less cigarette smokers due to stigma and shame. We have less cigarette smokers because we have vapes, and we have freaking what are they called? The pouches. More people have moved to those.
That was way after I mean, I would have to look it up, but the decrease that we saw with the truth ads were way before vapes were a thing.
It's the same thing. The other night I heard you on Grid One's channel, and I thought this was pretty good. You were talking about fat shaming and how we fat shamed obesity. Like, I don't know, we fat shamed
and
obesity.
I actually thank you for bringing that up, because I actually didn't get to finish my point, because I was trying to say I was saying that fat shaming does work, and and
then she brought up the body positivity movement,
right? And so I'm saying that yes, the fact that is we've hit the peak of that. We're moving beyond that, and so we're in the process of that now. So we may be at the peak right now, but the fact that body shaming goes against the body positivity is what is helping people.
So similar to my vape and my pouch and my Zen pouch argument, why do you think the body positivity movement ended?
Because it's unscientific and it doesn't make sense.
Could it have anything to do with GLP-1s and Ozempic and Lizzo getting skinny all of a sudden, and everybody's got a faster way to get skinny now, so we don't have to keep pushing body positivity. Now we can push GLP-1s and people can just stick a needle in their stomach and get skinny instead of working out, and the government can profit.
I mean, rich people can. The average person can't afford that.
How much is it?
I mean, I don't know, but why do we still see fat people walking around? We only see celebrities using Ozempic.
Well, there's going to be fat people, right? Just like there's going to be people,
prostitutes, smokers. Yeah, there's always going to be these things. And what I'm arguing is that what I'm proposing, legalization with strict regulations, will force, and maybe I'll even give you this. Maybe temporarily there would be a spike in use, but I think that we can see that the values of our nation that are getting stronger between Christians and Christian ethics and secular people who are seeing that the left is garbage, like myself, we are becoming a stronger and stronger and stronger coalition. And so, in the same way that the trans thing has, died down, has started to die down, that is not because anybody banned being trans, but people were finally willing to say, no, I'm not using whatever freakazoid pronouns you want. You can't get in the bathroom with my daughter, so on and so forth.
Yeah, I don't know if that's the same thing. Well, I guess, so whatever. I'll take that example, but that's kind of different. It's a social contagion from mental illness,
right? And so I would argue that the regular use of prostitution is exactly the same thing, and maybe a more difficult problem to address.
If degeneracy is a mental illness, the social contagion in the prostitution case would just be the spread of degeneracy. People like sex; they want to have sex, and especially when young men are unsexed and they're less social. They're more antisocial. They're on the internet all the time. They're going to be more likely to just spend some money to get sex.
So let me give you a hypothetical here. So I mean, I would assume that you think corn is bad.
Yeah.
So do you think that if let's say we have an 18-year-old boy, virgin, incel, whatever, is it better for him to spend all day, because again, we're talking about the laws that we already have. So corn is legal. So would you rather that 18-year-old boy spend all day gooning in his room to I call it P-Hub content, or once a week he goes out and sees a toot, and the rest of his week he's actually a productive member of society? Which one would be better?
Those are my only two options.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying which would be better out of the two. I'm not saying that's the only thing that the boy can do.
Because there's a better option.
Absolutely. I'm just saying between those two options, which one is worse?
Between those two, probably the gooning in his room.
Exactly. So then what you're establishing, that I agree with, that it is at least potential that if we have these people with these issues, then maybe solution is a strong word, but a way to help them is to be able to get them actual human interaction, and then they can be more productive members of society. And then, of course, like we said before, we don't have to worry as much about the STDs and stuff, and the violence, and now everybody's happy.
Yeah, but you gave me two horrible options. It's like, would you rather get drowned or burned to death? Like, both of those are bad.
Yeah,
we could,
drown.
we could make pornography and prostitution illegal, and then that would lead to more social shame and stigmatization. You know what is really shameful is having a criminal record, going to jail. That'll really shame somebody is once you get a mug shot and you spend a month in jail, and then you come out and you have a criminal record and you can't get a good job. That's very socially stigmatizing. That will deter people from doing things that they might otherwise want to do.
No, I understand that your argument is that we should make it illegal. But yeah, obviously going to jail is a bad thing. But I think the question is this worthy of going to jail? So again, if we bring it back to another behavior that we don't like, I don't think you would agree with, if you want to prohibit the use of alcohol, I don't know how willing you would be to give somebody a prison record for just possessing alcohol.
Maybe it's not a felony. Maybe it's this would all be the policy stuff. How we
but they have a record. They have a record, and they can't get a job because
maybe it's a misdemeanor the first time.
Do you think that's a reasonable punishment for somebody owning a bottle of alcohol?
No, if you like,
what are we talking about?
No, I'm saying if you're drunk in public, that's not a felony. That's a misdemeanor. You might spend a night in the drunk tank.
Sure.
So you would do similar things.
You specifically said they have a record, and it prevents them to get a job. So whichever scenario that you're saying, this person is no longer able to get a job because they owned a bottle of alcohol.
Yes, I'm saying
that's what you're proposing.
Yes, breaking the law.
Yeah, that's
and getting punished for breaking the law.
But
stigmatizes it. It deters people from wanting to do it. So maybe it's not like the first time a prostitute gets caught, she's going to go to prison for 10 years and have a felony on her record. No, it would start as a misdemeanor. Maybe she spends a night in jail. Maybe she has a fine. And then if she keeps getting caught doing it over and over again, eventually you ramp it up like we do with other crimes already. We would come to an agreement on what a fair punishment is for this. And then that would be the stigmatization. That would be the deterrence. Because, you know, at like the Bunny Ranch, they don't STD test the men. So what is the harm reduction?
Well, then they should.
Doing?
I mean, like, I'm not saying
they're gonna have rapid acting STD tests.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they have those. No,
I don't know. I didn't look into that.
I'm not that active, so I don't really know. But what I'm getting at is all of these things have ways that they can be addressed by regulation. We don't just have to say it's bad, therefore nobody can ever do it ever. And if you do it, now your life is ruined. I don't think that is a good way to address these things.
At what point do we regulate it so much that it's basically illegal?
How do you mean?
Like, what sort of regulations are you talking? You're talking about it needs to be done in a brothel. They need to have STD tests. They need to have security there so that they don't get raped or beaten. Stuff like that. Okay. Yeah. And then now when the women, let's say she loses her job at the brothel and she goes and starts working on the street. Is that going to be illegal?
I would say, I don't know. I mean, there would be, again, going back to my opening statement, wouldn't just be like you could do it anywhere. We would have to say if it is thus that you don't need a brothel, then maybe you need some type of, I don't know, like license or something, or I don't know. Okay. So potentially they could do this work outside of a brothel. Yes.
Let's say 5% of prostitutions end up working in brothels and end up having their license and getting their STD tests and having the security and a front desk where the guy checks in and all that stuff. 95% of them are still doing it illegally. In Nevada.
So then we arrest those people.
Okay. So if 95% of it's illegal, isn't it basically, I mean, that's pretty much illegal. This is the same thing I had with the drug debate. It's basically, it's illegal, but we have carve-outs for ways that you could do it legally. Just like Oxycontin, it's illegal for me to walk around with Oxycontin and sell Oxycontin. But there's a carve-out where if I get my prescription from the hospital, that would be legal.
Yeah.
Oxycontin is still illegal. So prostitution would still be illegal, but we'd have, just like we have in Nevada, if you're in a city with less than 700,000 people, you could set up a brothel.
Well, right, but this
the
is
majority of prostitution in Nevada is still illegal prostitution.
Well, that's as of right now. That's because it's illegal, and we don't have the resources to. You can't build a brothel and be like and advertise and all that stuff. If you were able to do that, then unless you have a reason to think that most of those wouldn't go into the brothels, and yes, again, you're going to have streetwalkers no matter what.
So you're not even arguing for legalization. You're arguing for decriminalization and regulation. The equality model or the Nordic model is not legalization.
Well, okay, so tell me which part of what I'm saying does not qualify as legalization.
Are you a fan of the equality model? Like streetwalkers, hookers on the street, should they be criminalized? No. Should that be illegal? No.
Not necessarily. Again, not necessarily. I mean, I would need more specifics, but essentially, no. I think if you want to do that, there should be laws on how that has to be done. Maybe certain places where it can be done, a red light district or something like that, regulations. But if you're there, then go for it.
Okay. Yeah. See, this is basically just decriminalization and regulation. Legalization, if you legalized it, it could be like alcohol is legal. I can walk down to the 7-Eleven and get alcohol. And then there's regulations for when I can't do it. But the majority of the time I can get alcohol anytime I want, wherever, at any bar, at any gas station.
So are guns legal?
Guns are legal.
So you could just go into a store anywhere in the U.S. and buy a gun.
Okay, so where's the?
No, you can't.
No, you can't. Okay, so
And so
guns,
I agree that should not be the case, but then you can't say that, well, it's legal and it's not. So we're talking about, I mean, I really think that we actually kind of are not too far apart on this in terms of the point
well,
that
no,
you're
I
willing to
wouldn't.
accept.
I wouldn't allow brothels.
No. I know. I'm not saying your position. I'm sorry. I'm not too far. I don't think there is too far for us to be like, oh, okay, I disagree, but that does make a lot of sense. I think we're arguing for a very. I think what you're saying is again. I know that you want to abolish it all, but the things that I'm proposing, it seems like you're like, okay, well, that's not really what I thought. I thought you were kind of just saying that everybody could do it anyway, and I know that you didn't say that.
No, I kind of figured this was what it was going to be, is because a lot of times people say legalize this, and then when I start asking them, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? It's so regulated that it might as well just be illegal.
But it's not.
But it's not illegal.
I mean, it may as well be. Sure, I agree with you. But just because something may as well be illegal doesn't make that illegal. That's not.
So where's the line that we draw where it goes from legalization to decriminalization to, because if the pimps and the Johns are still, getting prosecuted, that's not legal prostitution.
It is if they're doing it outside of the regulations that were given. Again, let's say in New York City, Donnie wins and he has a red light district, and you can go and you could be a pimp and you could be a prostitute, you could be a John in this one city block. That is legal in that municipality. And so I'm not even saying that we need a federal law that it is absolutely legal everywhere. I'm just saying it should not be illegal in the sense that if a town wants to say we don't want to have any prostitution here, then okay. I mean, a town could make it illegal just like anything else. But I kind of thought we were talking more on the federal scale.
Well, when we're talking about legalization, we're talking about government regulation and government taxation. Like the government basically comes in and controls this market now, or they can outsource to corporations and things like that, but everybody has to go through the government to get the proper approval to sell the alcohol, to sell the cigarettes, to sell the pot. They go through the government now. That's legalization. Big Daddy government becomes daddy of the hookers now, the pimp.
Right, but that's all the only reason that isn't the case is because the pimps are the daddies. And so if we're going from pimps to the government, then the recourse is there. And so both pimps and government is bad. I agree. But if we're saying who's going to control this and make sure that this is going well, I'm going to trust the government slightly more than the pimps. Maybe an individual pimp, I'd be like, hey, I don't know about all pimps, but this guy knows what he's doing. The government, fuck the government. But in general, I'm not going to say that the reputations of our politicians matter so little that they would be willing to make laws that are so egregious that it doesn't fit the legal principles that I'm putting forth.
But legalizing it doesn't get rid of the pimps. It just makes more pimps and legal pimps. And still illegal.
But I think again, going back to the comparison to the pimp versus the employer, that when you talk about someone being property, I think when you're talking about the black market and you have a pimp and the bottom bitch or whatever, then let's not be sexist. All right, don't forget about Ghislaine Maxwell. She was the Mac Daddy of all pimps. But I shouldn't have made that joke. I don't remember where I was going. God damn it. What was the last thing you said?
I'm talking about the dual economy. I'm talking about how legalizing it is not going to get rid of the harms. It's not going to get rid of the so you say you want to reduce harms.
Get rid of the harms.
You want to reduce harms and you want to increase social stigma and shame. And I'm saying legalizing it is going to decrease social stigma and shame, and it's going to increase harm, because now there's going to be more women likely to go into prostitution. There's going to be more men likely to engage in prostitution. And there's going to be more men who want to become pimps or brothel owners.
But if that is in a if that is in a context where we regulate any other thing, then okay, personally, you're saying that you want all things that JS says is bad or illegal. I get that, but is that the the is that what you're putting forth, that everybody should think that anything that JS thinks is bad should be prohibited? And I mean, I'm not even necessarily
I'm
disagreeing. I'm not even necessarily disagreeing with your point, but that is kind of a that is kind of I mean that's kind of a you don't really have any justification for that. I think my argument is the exact opposite, that even if there's a slight increase, that society and Christian values would win out, and we would be able to stamp that out in the same way we did with cigarettes.
If Christian values won out, we would make it illegal. The sword of God appoints the authorities to wield the sword of wrath against the wrongdoer. We believe in justice. We believe in law and order. So we would have laws against this. You know, we have 2 books in the Bible that are dedicated to laws. So we would make laws against this.
Sure, but
God
you get what I'm
gave
saying.
a lot of laws.
Okay, but do you get what I'm saying? Or I could restate it. That's I wasn't making that point.
Yeah,
Like,
restate what you said.
Just the point
You
that
said, you said a Christian society would win out, and it would. Go ahead.
Right. So if we not necessarily a Christian society, but a society where Christianity is at the core. And so, like, again, as an agnostic atheist, I have no problems with Christianity being the core of how we figure things out. I just don't want to be forced to say, you know, I believe X,
Then
Y,
you
Z.
do. Then you do
what?
have a problem. You do have a problem with how a Christian founded nation would deal with things, because we would deal with things
That's
by
not what I said. I
punishing
said
wrongdoers.
The ethics.
The ethics of Christianity says we make laws and we punish wrongdoers.
Okay, and punishment could be shame.
And wrong is what's immoral, not the most utility or harmful. It's what's wrong. So if our nation is founded in Christian values, then we're going to have laws against things, and we're gonna lock people up or put people on probation or charge them fines, like we do.
So
But you
Christians
have a problem with
need a
that
law
because
to
of-
not engage
because
in
of our freedom.
degeneracy. Is that the argument you're making? Christians need a law to not engage in degeneracy?
We've been given laws to not engage in degeneracy, and we've
But
been
you need
told to
That's
follow
what I'm asking.
those laws and to wield those laws and
Would
have
you go
judges.
to a prostitute tonight if you got a revelation from God that was like, hey, prostitution's actually good? Would you go to a prostitute tonight?
Okay. First, so all the Christians don't get mad at me, because I'll bite these bullets. But that's not in God's nature to tell me to do that. But hypothetically,
How do you know that?
because we've been shown God's nature through the scripture and through ecclesiastical authority and through revelation, all these things. We know God's nature, that he's not going to tell us to do that. But
Who's we? Who's we?
Christians.
So Christians all believe the same
Listen,
thing
I'm
about
gonna
what God's will.
answer your question, and I'm gonna say yes.
Okay.
If I knew for a fact that God was standing in front of me, it's not Satan, it's not some demon. God is standing in front of me, and he tells me, tonight, I want you to go have sex with a hooker. This would be Hosea and Gomer. He did tell a guy to do this. So I would do it. Yeah. If he told me to marry a prostitute, I would do it.
Okay,
Yep.
fair. So that's a direct command. So if I can switch the question a little bit, if God said that prostitution was amoral, it wasn't good or bad, would you then go?
If all throughout the Bible and all throughout church history, prostitution was an acceptable, right thing to do, a moral thing to do, then yeah, I would say that we should not make it illegal. But that's not the case.
Wait, that wasn't the question. So again, if God says it is amoral, would you go to see a prostitute tonight?
Amoral meaning neither moral nor
correct.
immoral?
Correct.
No,
Why not?
because I don't like it.
Okay, and so the law should be just based on what
Because-
you like. I feel like we keep coming back to this. You're just talking about your
we've taken
preferences.
we've
So
taken
as a-
morality. Right. I'm trying to internally critique the utilitarian worldview. So yes, I'm just talking about my preference. There's no morals on the table. There's no Christian ethics on the table. We're just talking about what's good and bad for society and people in general, what's harmful.
Okay, so how about this? Let's say hypothetically, if it was the case that I was correct, that legalizing this would lower the harm because of all the things that we brought up. There was less violence. There was less STDs and all that, would you then agree that it should be legalized on the basis of harm, not your specific position, like where you were standing in this debate? If you were sure that legalizing it would lower the harm, would you change your position?
No, because it's just not my preference. The same way that you wouldn't legalize cannibalism.
No, again, that is not a specific.
The same way that you probably wouldn't legalize incest.
Right. But these are not because I specifically have a preference against it. It's that the culture.
Well, there's no harm. What's the harm? Where there's actually going to be a lot of benefit. We're going to end world hunger. Like, what's the harm from incest?
I mean, depending on the circumstances, it might not be any. But again, that is why the culture matters. It's not just about my preferences. I think that's the argument that you're making. Your preferences happen to be Christian ethics. And so you're just saying whatever I like should be legal and whatever I don't like should be illegal. You're not giving a justification beyond, I think it's yucky.
Yeah. And
so that's why I'm saying if it was the case that we knew that legalizing it would lower the harm, you still wouldn't change your mind.
I have shown harms. So we've talked about the harms. Like, how about, for example, the bunny ranch? I have a thing right here in front of me. A&E did a whole series on it from the Reno Gazette Journal. It talks about how women at the bunny ranch report being abused, bullied. They don't sex test the men, or they don't STD check the men who go there.
Yeah, they should.
They should STD check the men.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And when a woman,
real quick, because you'd asked about this before, and the rapid test, I would say that no, you would have to. I don't know how long STD tests take, but let's say it takes 3 days. That you would have to have, a paper within the last 2 weeks that you got tested, or something like that. So you don't have to go in and do a rapid test. You just already have the papers that you need.
I think it must be pretty rapid because they do them weekly.
Okay, there you go. So then
they do weekly STI tests and monthly HIV tests. So the HIV test probably takes a little longer. But say the woman gets off work and she goes and sleeps and has sex with her boyfriend, not in the brothel. She just has sex with her boyfriend, but her boyfriend was running out on her during the daytime and he picked up an STD. Now she has an STD. She goes to work and gets checked and she loses her job. She's got to keep making money. She's got to keep paying her bills. So what's she going to do?
Find another job. I mean, sometimes shit happens. Like, you're not owed a job, right?
She's going to do what she knows. She's going to go work the street.
What does it have to do with the legalization? Just because somebody's going to do something bad doesn't mean that in the situation where you've had bad life circumstances and you make bad decisions, that has nothing to do with what we're talking about. Because
my point is that we're still going to arrest prostitutes. We're still going to arrest Johns. We're still going to arrest pimps.
If they break, if they break the regulation.
So the only thing you're doing by legalizing these brothels is when a little girl's growing up, she sees commercials on TV for the brothel. She sees billboards when she goes outside for the brothel. There's a brothel built down the street from her. And she says, when I grow up, I want to be a hooker.
So then maybe we as individuals, part of this community, should be stronger at calling out when people are going to put up a billboard and say, we don't want that in our town. We don't want this kind of stuff. We don't want a brothel here. That is, again, atrophying the moral muscle of our communities. Just say, well, let the government figure it out. And if the government says yes, well, okay, there we go. Now we've got billboards everywhere. That is exactly the problem. The problem.
When something's
we need a
illegal,
stronger moral conscience, and we can't have that conscience without the ability to do wrong. Someone who cannot act immorally cannot be a moral agent.
Where do you get that from? Where do you get that morality from? Where does our society get that morality from?
What
we like and what we don't like. If prostitution's illegal, because as a society, a secular society, we think it's wrong and people should be punished for doing it, then we make it legal. Now we've just said, okay, it's not wrong anymore, secular people. We just legalized it. Why would people be like, oh, well, don't be putting up billboards and stuff. We don't like it. Then she should have kept it illegal. And assuming this is in a democracy, this means people are voting for this. So overall, people vote to legalize it. Why do you think that they're going to start shaming it after that?
I'm not proposing that the same people who are voting for it are going to be shaming it. But
So the
I think-
minority is going to shame the majority.
Sure. But the minority, those things change. And like I've already conceded to you, yeah, I think if we legalize it, that there would be a small bump, but on the long term, then it would just not be something that is as novel. And we've already gotten to the point of harm where you talked about where we compared the gooner and the guy who goes to see a prostitute. So that is less harm. Then I don't see why we wouldn't want to go in that direction. But again, if you're just going to say, well, no, it's bad, I think it's bad, so it should be illegal. Like, okay, I guess I can't argue with that, but I don't know if that's a legal argument.
Yeah, I gave you a bunch of examples of harms that it causes.
Right. I gave you a bunch of counter examples as to why that's not the case. So if you want to dig into the data, we can't do that. But if you're saying that all of these, like this percent gets this and that percent gets that, then you would also have to prove that that would not go down if we had these brothels. And you can't prove that. You
don't even need to go into the data. It's common sense.
It's not common sense. I completely think the opposite, and I just gave you a logical thing as to why. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's why I'm asking you to prove me wrong. You can't just say that I'm wrong because it's obvious. That's not an argument.
Well, I've given you lots of examples.
Right, and I've knocked down all of that. I've addressed everything that you said. What have I not addressed?
You haven't knocked down. I just said that bunny ranches, when there's legalized prostitution, murders in places.
That's not what you brought up. You brought up testing when you brought up the bunny ranch.
I brought up the bunny ranch. I brought up this Reno Gazette article that I have right in front of me. I brought up Julie Bindel, who's a well-known researcher in this area, talking about how homicides go up from Johns and pimps in areas where they've decriminalized it. Decriminalized supply, meaning they just decriminalized the woman. The hooker is now legal, but they go after the Johns and the...
Right, but she's still out on the streets.
Yeah, and she's a legal prostitute. And you said you were for that.
I said under certain circumstances. I said under certain circumstances, but we were particularly talking about the brothels. Okay. I was saying that I don't know specifically about the streetwalkers. I'm specifically talking, I'm majority specific.
The Netherlands, Amsterdam, the Netherlands, they have the red light district that you brought up. So you said it would just be legal to be a streetwalker in the red light district. Okay. Homicides from Johns and pimps against prostitutes, where prostitution, the supply, the woman is legal to do her job. Homicides go up. There's more murders.
Okay, so arrest murderers, and then there will be less murderers.
Or we could arrest the things before we get to the point where we have to even worry about the murders. We stop that thing from happening in the first place.
So something bad might happen. So we should arrest this person so that something bad doesn't happen. Sounds like Minority Report to me.
No, you stop the precursor to the crime that leads to the crimes. That is also should be a crime.
Can you say that one more time, please?
You stop the lead up to the crime. Like it's like with drugs. If you want to reduce drug dealers and drug overdose, you make drugs illegal. You don't legalize drugs.
Right.
And then go after the drug dealers.
Fair. But then you don't get arrested if you're driving on your way to the dealer. Even if you're on the way to your dealer, you have not done a crime yet. What you are proposing is arresting someone before they do the crime so that the crime doesn't happen.
No, I'm saying the act of prostitution should be a crime in itself, and that crime leads to more greater crimes. So
what are the gun laws like in Amsterdam?
I don't think they have any gun rights. I don't know.
So maybe if these women were allowed to carry firearms, then that might be a bigger factor than the fact that they are prostitutes. Can you prove that that's not the case?
Well, I could point to America. We have more gun deaths with guns legal. So I don't see why legalizing guns is going to reduce murders.
Because then they won't get murdered because they have a gun. And
so
you pull the gun and say, "Run away! Don't murder me."
A little 18-year-old girl, scrawny little girl, pulls out her gun.
Yeah. Why do you think they call it the Great Equalizer? You think 18-year-old women can't carry guns? What are we talking about?
Okay, so you think the guy with the gun is going to lose to the girl with the gun?
I mean,
It's no
I would
different.
argue
It's
that
no different
neither
than
of them would be
kids.
likely to try as much, knowing that there are guns in the equation. That's
It's
why
no-
the Second Amendment is a good thing. We want those. We want that level of threat there, so that people won't while out.
I agree.
That's exactly the point. So
Yeah,
why?
I agree. Guns should be
So
legal.
again,
but I'm
can you
saying,
prove that the murder rate is not more connected to the gun laws than it is the prostitution?
yes, in Nevada, where prostitution is decriminalized in certain counties, and they have the right to carry guns, there's more murders of prostitutes.
Then wait. Then where?
Than in places where they have.
Might that be because they have more prostitutes because it's legal?
They have more prostitutes in Vegas, and it's not legal in Vegas. Which goes to my other
jumping
point.
around it, but I don't. Can you give me your bottom line here? I promise I'm not trying to play stupid.
I'm saying
Maybe I'm
if
just dumb.
when they legalize supply, when they legalize the women being hookers, and they have brothels, murders go up of prostitutes.
But
Now
again,
you could say that's because there's more prostitutes.
even I'm just throwing that out there. Again, that's a correlation. Unless you can prove a causation, then just because two things happen doesn't mean that they're caused by each other. Like it could also be the fact that you were talking about oh no, that was a different thing. But it could be related to the fact that people who don't live in the area are in Vegas a lot more often than people seeing prostitutes in other areas. Correlation does not equal causation.
Okay.
So you can't give me the murder thing. I mean, if you can prove it, then I'm willing to. I mean, I just conceded on a debate where I got $100 on Saturday because I was like, damn, you got me. But
I know. I don't know why you can. I don't know why you could see it. You should have just stuck it out.
I was
Anyway.
too tired, man. I was too tired. I had it. As soon as that, but whatever.
Okay. So we have brothels in Nevada, but there's still a bunch of illegal prostitutes working the strip in Vegas because they like you're saying, we regulate it where, for example, in Nevada, they can only have brothels in towns with less than 700,000 people. So all the brothels are like out in the desert. You got to drive really far to get them. They're in the middle of nowhere. But the majority of the prostitutes, well, it's illegal on the strip, and that's where the majority of the prostitutes go. They escort and hook on the strip because there's more money there. And that was my point, to say, just because you regulate it and you say it's going to be legal as long as you're in this brothel and we have all these regulations and we do all these tests, prostitution increases, but they go where they do it illegally. So you still have the dual economy. You still have to arrest people who are doing prostitution.
I don't think that, again, I think you're appealing to a correlation. I don't think that what you're saying is caused by the fact that it's legalized. I think there are other factors, like I was bringing up, that people who have no ties to the community. There's way more people who are going to engage in prostitution in Vegas or Reno that have no ties to the community than in bumfuck whatever. So I'm asking you to prove a causal factor.
I'm not saying that legalizing it caused it. All I'm saying is that by somewhat legalizing and decriminalizing it and regulating it in Nevada, the numbers of prostitutes increases, and most of them are doing it illegally. So they're still getting arrested anyway. So when is it okay?
I'm fine with that. If you're breaking the law, then I'm fine with you being arrested.
Okay. So what about the non-aggression principle?
What about it?
When is it okay for law enforcement to aggress on somebody and arrest them? When they're breaking the law, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So where's the problem with keeping prostitution illegal? If it's not like what is it? Is it bodily autonomy? It's about my freedoms. You don't want to give Big Daddy government too much power, but you're willing to give them.
There you go. Dilly.
Yeah, but that doesn't make sense because you're still okay with arresting illegal prostitutes. You just don't want to arrest the legal ones.
And that's like saying, oh, so you want to let people drink alcohol, but you just want to arrest the ones that are driving drunk. Yeah, that's why we have the regulations, so that when people are going to do it, and again, of course, people are going to break the law. People are going to break whatever regulations. But when we think about speed limits, we have speed limits, right? And most people drive over the speed limit. But do you think that on average, a car is going to be driving faster in a 25-mile-an-hour zone or a 55-mile-an-hour zone? Even if they're both speeding, which is likely to be faster?
Which is likely to be over the speed
No,
limit?
which car is likely to be traveling at a faster speed? A car in a 25-mile-an-hour zone or a car in a 55-mile-an-hour zone?
The car in the 55-mile-per-hour
Okay,
zone.
but people can still speed, right? So why do we have a
Yes,
speed limit?
because we have
Why do we have stop signs? People run through stop signs, right?
we have laws.
Right,
Would
but
you
these
say we should just
So what I'm
should we
saying
just
is
get
that
rid of
these
those laws?
regulations, even if these regulations are not 100% perfect, that there are no accidents, there's no people running red lights, there's no people speeding, then the fact that they exist, there's a cultural element that you don't want to be going 55 in a 25.
Yeah, I'm fine with regulation. I'm fine with keeping it all illegal. And then maybe you could
You're
regulate.
just fine with it all.
No, making it illegal is regulation.
It's regulating. It means taking away. Is taking away government prohibition. I don't know how you're saying that the government letting you do something more is more prohibitive than the government saying you can't do it. How can you explain that to me?
You're letting certain people do it,
Mm-hmm.
which drives up the demand for said thing.
Okay.
So then more people want to get into that business, but then there's still illegal people doing it, and you're still arresting them. Why wouldn't you just keep it all illegal to add more shame and more stigmatization to it so that less people are likely to do it? So now you're arresting less people.
Because then there becomes a counterculture around it. Now it's not just some shady thing. Now it's like, oh, we're part of the club. Where we going to do that? I mean, not super proud of it, but I was a drug addict in my 20s. There was a community aspect of it, and so when we were all hitting up the plug and all these types of things that were isolating from normal culture, that became our identity, and we started to appreciate those things, and that is not good. Whereas if these drugs were legal, let's just even talk about cannabis. Because I mean, I still smoke, but I don't do all that other stuff. But if at the time cannabis was legal in New Jersey, I highly, highly, highly doubt I would have gotten into the harder drugs. And even if I did, there is no way that it would have been as deep as I got. So because there's more to it than just the drug, and I think the same thing applies to prostitution.
Because it's cooler to do it when it's illegal.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be less cool to do it. I don't think that's how it works with OnlyFans. I don't think that's how it works with pornography. I don't think that's how it works with pot. I think more people probably smoke pot now than when it was illegal.
Yeah, but
now they say less young people are getting into it at earlier ages.
Exactly.
But
So
I've seen conflicting studies on that.
Right.
But
so that's why I brought up the I know you didn't go down this road, but it illustrates the point about the sex trafficking thing. That yes, you see an increase of numbers of sex trafficking. What do they call them? Instant inflows or something, which isn't an individual person. It's like a whole thing, but that is only one factor. So you see more people being trafficked, still under the definition of hey, you want to come back to my place? I live 10 minutes away, and it happens to be over state lines. That's technically sex trafficking. Yes, you will see more of those instances, but you see lower instances of people getting hurt. You see lower instances of all the diseases. You see lower instances of people being so deep in the life that they are just that degenerate. Versus, as I brought up before, the situation where you have the Gooner kid versus once a week he goes to the brothel, and you agreed that the second is preferable.
yeah, but you also talked about some places we're going to do this. It's not going to be a federal thing. So you're talking about a city could decide to do this, or a state could decide to do this. You would have to do it federally, because in America you can just cross state lines whenever you want. So what you just said, yeah, if you legalize it in one state, then people are just going to go into that state to do it. So you'd have to do it.
Okay.
It would have to be a federal thing in America.
That's only a problem when it is on the black market. If people are going in, that's what I was going to say about the cannabis. Like, okay, yes, more people are doing it, but they're not getting laced stuff. They're not getting they're not getting robbed because they're waiting on the plug. Well, I mean,
China.
Yeah, you're right. A lot of people
They
Still use the
found
black
they
market,
found crazy
but-
chemicals in the carts because China's producing those cartridges.
Right, but those are not legal here. Those are illegal. The Curaleaf carts, those are
The cartridges
tested-
that they sell
yes,
in
yes,
the pot
the
shops
ones
aren't legal.
Yes, no, the ones from China that have the vitamin E that blow up. Trust me, bro. Yeah, I know what I'm talking about on this one.
Yeah, I
it is
do
not
too.
just the carts. It is the fact
Yeah, I
that
do
the
too.
Chinese
Okay.
made things that are illegal. They were illegally sold to American distributors that had vitamin E in it. And so when you hit the button and it heats up the vitamin E, then it explodes. That has nothing to do with a standard 510 cart.
Anyway, I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about in Maine and in Oklahoma where the Chinese
can you
snakeheads are
can you
running
acknowledge
pot
what I'm
farms.
saying though about the fact that even though there are more people engaging in cannabis, the activity of engaging in cannabis itself, if only because you don't have to use the black market, is safer. You could walk into a dispensary where you know that at least the government, I mean, as much as you trust the government,
No,
at least the government has regulated this.
No, because when I want the best food, I go to the local butcher. I don't
Tell
go to
me
the
you've
grocery
never.
store.
Oh man, tell me you never hit up the plug.
I don't get the.
You never hit up the plug.
I don't get the. I don't think this guy knows me very well, but
then what are you talking about?
when
bro?
I want
you've
the
never
food,
been in a shady area waiting in your car for an hour and a half. A dude said, "I'll be there in 10 minutes," and then a bunch of people are walking by and you get held up. That's never happened to you.
When I want the cleanest,
that's never happened
product,
to you.
I go to the local guy.
Can you guys hear me? I thought I just asked a question. So has that ever happened to you?
Well, I was answering your last question. I guess you didn't understand what I was saying. When I want the cleanest, best product, I go to the farmer who I know, or I go to the butcher who I know to get the meat. I don't want the GMO.
Is that meat legal or illegal?
Yeah, because the government doesn't put nothing in the
meat
food.
Legal
they don't put
or
no
illegal?
Chemicals.
Is that meat legal or illegal?
If I don't know, maybe he's not following all the FDA restrictions or something, but he happens to have a cow, I'll go to the butcher. But it doesn't make it. What's the difference?
The point is that we're talking about black market versus not black market. So all you're talking about is a farmer's market versus Walmart. That's not the same thing. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the black market where it is illegal versus the clean market where.
And in the black market, in this case, we're talking about the supply is young girls.
Mm-hmm.
And their STI rates aren't going down. They just lose their job at the
young
brothel
adult
when they get an
girls
STI.
who have
their abuse rates
who have
don't
the
go
agency
down.
to make any decision that they want, like any other adult, right?
And the majority of the girls who are trafficked into legal sex work.
Well, again, then we need to dig into what exactly do you mean by trafficked? Do they mean, hey, come on over? I'll you don't have a car? I'll pick you up. That's sex trafficking, bro. That's what I'm talking about. So maybe the number of instances of people getting a ride over state lines to start an OF is going up, but that doesn't mean that more people are being harmed. And I've made the argument that all of the numbers with the STDs would likely, I'm not even saying I know for sure, would likely go down because of these regulations.
Yeah, I was going to let you answer if you wanted there.
Yeah. I'd give you the last word.
All right.
I'm good.
So that will conclude the open floor portion. And whenever you're ready for your closing statement, I will start the timer up with your voice. And again, thank you for being here.
So yeah, I'm just going to go through my opening statement again. I was arguing that the practice should be illegal. Again, legality does not equal morality. I think mostly what was made were either moral arguments or harm arguments that I had been able to address. It's not about prostitutes being good or bad or what people should or should not be doing. It is about the governmental system and the legal process. Again, I agree. It's degenerate. So it's bad. That doesn't mean that bad should be illegal. We should legalize it not because of virtue, but because prohibition is objectively more harmful than legalization with regulation. I am not arguing that anyone should be able to sell their body in any manner they please, full stop, as my opponent tried to frame it. I am specifically saying that prohibiting this activity has shown, just like alcohol, cannabis, and guns, that it does not work. Yeah, and I really need to hammer home this moral muscle thing. I think that I'm a little bit confused why not just you, JS, but Christians in general aren't a little bit more open to this notion that by relegating things to the government, we are atrophying as a society, as a community, our ability to do things on our own. I think this is just another step in that. And okay, maybe I was wrong about Christianity and that it would dictate that it would be illegal, but based on the ethical values, whether it is legal or not, I would expect that if you're a pious Christian man, that you're not being a John, and if you're a pious Christian woman, that you are not prostituting yourself. Again, we both talked about other countries that do this, and they have mixed results in the sense that some things get worse, but other things get better. Again, my argument is that the calculus is that despite some things getting worse, there is more benefits. What else we got here? Again, yes, we can talk about how dangerous this and that is, but we have to dig into what these things actually mean. When we talk about murders in the Netherlands, then we have to understand the holistic idea of what it is that we're talking about. We can't just say because there is prostitution and more murders that prostitution is the cause. And again, there are mixed studies, but there are plenty of studies that say that it is a good trade. Yeah, again, the guy that lives 10 minutes over the state line, that is considered sex trafficking. So all of these numbers are highly inflated by things that I don't think anybody would think are wrong or harmful. I mean, I think between the cigarettes argument and the car argument, where we've seen that without prohibition, cigarettes smoking has gone way down, and we saw that before vapes got popular. And then even though people break the law, even though people don't necessarily follow the speed limit, the fact that there is a speed limit, aka a regulation, does affect how people behave. You're not going to often see someone driving 55 miles an hour in a 25 mile an hour zone, and that's not because they just decided to. It's because they're influenced. Even if they're going 30, 35, then they're going 35, not 55. Yeah, and again, I mean, maybe we don't like Benjamin Franklin, but they that can give up essential liberty to obtain a little bit of temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Say no to daddy government being the arbiter of morality. I'm live every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Come through, and I concede my time, JS. Thank you for the debate, sir.
All right. Thank you for that closing statement. And with that, we'll hand the mic over to JS Urban Adventures for your closing statement. Whenever you're ready, I'll start the timer up with your voice.
I don't think you defeated my cost-benefit analysis. Is my voice coming through? Oh, okay. Oh, okay, cool. Something changed. Yep. Oh, thank you. Okay. Anyway, I don't think you defeated the cost-benefit analysis. I showed you from a utilitarian perspective all of the harm and all of the aggression that would still happen if we legalized prostitution. It doesn't quell any of these issues. Trafficking. A lot of those women who are trafficked are young girls, and then they get brought in and they get groomed into sex work. And from a Christian perspective, yes, we do believe in government. We do believe in hierarchies. We believe in patriarchies. We believe in authority. That's what God is. He's an authority. He's a lawgiver. He gives us laws based on morality, and we do legislate morality, and we use God's commands to make those laws, and we punish the wrongdoer. Speed limits are not regulations. It's illegal to go over the speed limit. So I think a lot of people have some sort of confusion between what decriminalization is and regulation and legalization. I would argue that it's better to just keep it illegal. And then if there was I can't see any circumstance where we should legalize at all prostitution, but we were talking about we kind of got onto the drugs thing, and I guess it kind of ties into this because it's, I'm trying to prohibit something. We have a carve out for when it's legal to have drugs, you get a prescription, but it's still illegal to have those drugs. Those drugs are still illegal. Speed limits are still illegal, even though people break them. Murder, theft, all these things, we keep them illegal and people still do them. Maybe you would say they cause harm to others. Well, I demonstrated you harms that are caused to men, to women, to the prostitutes, even to the Johns. We didn't even talk about rolling a John. I was talking to a lady of the streets recently, and she was telling me about rolling a John, where they robbed the John. But anyway, I'm almost done. I'll keep my my closing short. This doesn't make sense for a libertarian. It leads to more government overreach. It leads to more profit for the government and bigger government. It doesn't make sense to a utilitarian because there's no utility in somebody getting their rocks off in a hooker. You didn't demonstrate any benefits. You said you defeated my cost benefit analysis. You didn't tell me any benefits. The only benefit was people want to be able to do stuff that we want to be able to do. Why can't we do it? That's not a benefit. What is the benefit to prostitution? Girls get money from selling their body, and what, guys get a nut? That's the only benefit I see to this. Unless you're going to argue that taxation, the government can make more money, which again, that doesn't seem, that doesn't lead to more liberty. That leads to less liberty. Do I have any other notes or anything? Brothels don't improve these things. They increase the amount of prostitution. They increase the amount of murders. They increase the amount of harm to the women. I don't know. I'm not great at closings, but thank you guys. Thank you, Indian Jeebus. I don't like your name, Lutch.
That's what I put. Yeah, that's why I put Lutch there for everyone who doesn't.
Thank you for hosting, Easy. This was fun, but I'll see in my time get into the open panel.
All righty. Thank you for that. Huge thanks to everybody showing support through Super Chats and even just asking questions. All of the engagement, all the support helps, keeps this show going and make these debates possible, okay? And big respect to both debaters stepping into the arena tonight, okay? Like I always say, whether you agreed or disagreed, it takes more than you know to come up here, hold your ground, test the ideas, and do it all in front of an audience. Thank you for watching the Swords of Reason on the SpeakeaZy show, where logic meets passion.